Hey everybody, Alexandus here with the Ashenfold Cartel, bringing you the second edition of the Ashenfold podcast, or as we're going to be calling it from now on, the AshenCast. I have with me, again from last time, Gentleman of Leisure. How are you?
Oh, fine. Can't get rid of me that easily, I'm afraid.
Well, we'll just keep on trying. We'll see what happens as we go on.
I'm not leaving this divan.
We'll see what we can do. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve still.
Oh my.
But anyways, I'm really excited about the guests that we have on today. As far as commentators, we have with us again, as we did last time, Shadowed Sin. And are you still with us there?
Yes, just checking a few things, but I'm here.
Okay, and really the guests that I'm really excited about having on today are from the guild White Aegis, or Aegis. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I know people pronounce it different ways. We have one of the PR officers, KaelisRa. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. Happy to be here.
And, of course, the illustrious guild leader who I've heard so much about, all of it being good, of course, is Terradrim, and how are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me over. And by the way, you're saying the name properly.
Fantastic. That's what I was going for. All right, so
Nailed it.
Yes, we have several things that we want to cover today. The first of which being the most important, if you're listening to this, before it's come out or been announced, that Guild Wars 2 has an official release date, which is fantastic. 8/28 or August 28th, I believe, if you pre-ordered, which I'm hoping, if you're listening and hasn't come out yet, that you have. I believe that you can start playing on the 25th. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so 25th, I'm hoping that everyone is going to be on there so we can get started. And as far as, you guys that are, listening here today, it's been a long time coming. Some of you have been waiting a little bit longer than others. And what does this kind of, mean for you guys as far as, there is now a release date?
I remember learning about it in 2007, started the guild in 2009. I've been waiting about almost 3 years. Had to quote the Marine from that one original StarCraft 2 trailer, "Hell, it's about time."
Myself joining this guild like a month ago, maybe two. I didn't even know the game was coming out until I joined.
Yeah, the moment I heard that there was finally a release date, I pretty much freaked out at the fact that I was going to be able to have, fewer hours of sleep, earlier mornings.
Yeah, it was a really great news and really big time to start planning. So it was really great news that got all of us really excited.
Yeah, definitely. And you really hit the next nail on the head, which was planning. And, Terradrim with your guild, and did that kind of make you guys shift gears, or did that make you do anything differently?
Oh yeah, we're definitely planning and doing things more actively. We've started a few plot branches, and as a lot of our members aren't that invested into Forum RP, having the game launch means that we'll be moving our story forward.
Awesome. And I know that we've been kind of shifting gears a little bit as well with the cartel. Sin, did you want to hit a little bit on what we're, a little briefly what we're doing with the guild, trying to get ready for launch?
The brief definition. Okay, the brief definition is we're doing a lot of updating to our content to get it ready, and I've got a little thing beeping here. Basically adding some visual aids to make it easier to access the lore. We're prepping. We're going to finally be finishing off Night of the Falling Act. We're going to probably be selling off a few of the bonded. Overall, we're hoping to launch with as many hands on deck and as active as possible, because basically the day of launch, a few days afterwards, I'm going to be at PAX Prime, so we got to get ready.
All right. So, and basically, for those that don't know, if you're kind of listening, and you're like, what are the bonded, things like that. A lot of that, I believe, all of that's really explained on the site Ashenfold.com, isn't it, Sin?
Yes, the bonded are right there. Even go check out ashenfold.wikia.com. You'll find it all there. It's under lore.
Okay, and so moving on really with the meat of what we're here for, and that's really to talk to you guys with the White Aegis. So, Terradrim, I guess if you want to hit it off, just kind of go over, the origins of the guild. How many leaders do you guys have? Because I know you're, one of the only leaders, but officers and things like that, I guess.
Our structure is still being built. That's part of what our gear shifting is. I'm the main captain, and I also have a co-captain, which is Rodolfer. KaelisRa is our ambassador, and we have places for 3 other officers. Those places are currently vacant. We have a lieutenant for the militia, which is in training, and we're currently filling in other places. But we have applicants, so it's just a story of seeing them prove themselves for that part.
Oh, of course. And how long has your guild actually been around?
My God, not even a year. And when we first started, it started off really slow with me and a couple of friends. And we weren't that actively looking because, as I said, quite a few of us weren't heavy in Forum RP. We were more looking to see with game launch and to do in-game RP. But when they started to announce the beta weekends, it really started to take off more around that time. And when Kaelis joined, he did great for connection, and we've been filling up members. Kaelis might be able to answer this one a little bit better. I think we're around 20 members or something close to that now.
Yeah, between about 20 and 25.
Oh, okay. So, well, actually, that's not bad at all if you guys are within a year, and a perfect time to make a guild if you're going to be trying to doing something like that with the game coming out. So, definitely, perfect opportunity. And as far as, since we're actually going to be, you're an RP guild, going to be on what would be the unofficial or official RP server, do you guys normally try to revolve around light, medium, heavy RP, or do you try to do a mixture?
There's going to be a bit of a mixture, but we're definitely revolving between medium and heavy. We're not going to go light, because even when we're going to be on the field and doing some group PvE or group PvP, on our website, one of the things that I've had described is elements of what I call RPVE and RPVP. So what we play, even if we're not talking or we're not doing a lot of talking ICly, is going to be accounted for as a story later. So let's say we're playing an event, and if your character ended up falling 2 or 3 times, whoever revived you, it'd be a good idea to give them thanks later, or maybe the person who revived them might want to tease the person that fell down.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea, and I'm hoping. I don't think we talked about that a whole lot with the cartel, but that is a pretty good idea, to be completely honest. Now, the story of the guild, I don't know if this is a lot of backstory, or because the cartel, I try not to go into backstory because there's so much of it, but what about you guys with the White Aegis? How did the guild kind of come about with being formed into what it is? And actually, what is the White Aegis guild?
We actually did work the lore, and me and Rodolfo even wrote part of the story on how it launched to where it is now. It's a two-part story. I'm not going to go into full details of all of it because some of it wouldn't be publicly known, but it's not a guild that hides itself, so it's known very publicly, especially around the area of Divinity's Reach. And it started off with a character who was in the Ebenhawk and came back to find his family in a really tough situation, because if you play Guild Wars 2, you kind of know that from the garrison, for example, they're lacking people to protect villagers, farmers, so the outskirts are lacking protection. And from seeing his family suffer, he gathered other men and women that were in similar situation, and they banded together to add protection. And from there, it grew into a group. They formed a guild, called themselves White Aegis, which is basically another version of saying pure protection. And they're just trying to protect those who need it. And they've started to work more as vigilantes. And they've been offering their services since, and they started human only. But as more treaties appeared and more races joined over, we started to have Norn friends for starters, and they joined in. And then the Sylvari came in, and then there was a treaty with the Char and the Azuran people setting up gates a little bit everywhere. So they kind of joined up at random a little bit. But then there was a big event where the former captains went on a very big scale missions and sort of got themselves offed. and the guild's partly disbanded, but the son of the Norn captain and the human captain didn't want to see all that work go to waste and sort of picked it back up from there, and that's a bit where we are at a few years later, re-recruiting and rebuilding the guild.
That sounds like a pretty well thought out story, actually. Now, do you guys have any issues? Well, like I would say IC wise, because you said that you're vigilante. So do any Norn, like, do they take it too far? Do any Char have any issues like protecting humans and things like that?
We actually don't have any Char in the guild yet. We're open to having them join. But I think it would be a funny evolution branch that will come over at some point, because I know my captain isn't friendly to Char. I've actually had some RP with the Ashenfold Cartel at some point, where it was, I don't know, a little bit of friction between human and Char. So I think that them joining will be a good branch. As for the Norn, the reason we have more than one captain is exactly because, as you know, Norn don't have militaries, have soldiers, so there had to be some goals set in for them where it's not just protection, because to them, the weak shouldn't be around. They're kind of polluting more than helping. So by protecting people, it gives opportunities for great hunts, and that's kind of how they're being led. So the captains kind of help and make sure that every race is well covered.
Well, that's quite impressive, really. I mean, this is speaking from past experience. It's good to see one so well thought out, because you always. Unfortunately, there was something in WoW I once unexperienced, and they tried to explain it, and by the end of it, all I could think was, basically, what you're trying to say is you're all Batman, vigilante style. It's good to actually see you've actually got a very clearly well thought out principle, and it makes a lot more sense, frankly, considering the amount of stuff that's going on in the lore at the moment in Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, because not every race is all like, let's protect the people, and like you've said, let's have a Batman thing, and we don't fully take the law in our own hands, because as you can see in the world today, if you go out and kill killers, well, you're going to end up in jail. So it is part of one of our IC rules, because I've built a little code of conduct for the guild, which is fully IC, and killing as a last resort, is part of it. It's something that is going to be more tricky with some Norn to implement, and I have already been looking around the forums, and I know with some members it probably will come up. But as with all new recruits, with all new guilds, I expect that there will be some need for IC discipline, but I just want to make sure that it's not going to have any OC repercussions.
Yeah, it could lead to good RP, really, I think is what we're all aiming for when it comes to guilds. So I can understand that very clearly, but when it comes down to it, you keep doing it, someone's probably going to start asking you for something wrong.
So as far as, the guild being, and this is something I was thinking, is if your guild is are they really good? Are they trying to do, outwardly good things? Or is there, like, any shade of sort of, like a hint of evil in it? Because usually, if I think of, a vigilante, I think of, they might take things too far. So, how do you guys balance that out? That's
really a thing of individuals. The direction of a guild itself, like I said, it's pure protection, so it would be purely good. The aim of the guild, the code of conducts, all lead to, as I said, killing as a last resort. If you arrest someone, like if, let's say, with the Ashenfold Cartel, with the story that might be coming up, if we were to arrest one of your members, catch them, we would have a certain amount of interrogation, but torture and other means would not be approved by guild leaders, and they would be handed to the Seraph, or if they're caught in Lion's Arch, to their authority. Same thing with any other city. So we would be handing them to higher authorities. So if you have, let's say, connections with those, it would be easier to escape. You don't have to really plan escaping our hands. And that was put both for IC reason and OC reason, Because let's say if we imprison someone from another guild and we keep them in our cages, then your character would be stuck until the members from our guild are available to RP out, them escaping. So this kind of escapes or goes around this problematic. However, some of the members that joined the guild, they're pledging themselves for a greater reason. How honest they are about these reasons, that is really up to them. There's no reason why one of our members, or many of our members, cannot have a more corrupt personality where they're vigilantes, but their interpretation of what's good isn't necessarily the same as guild lead.
And I want to say quickly that, especially with that thread that popped up a long time ago that Alton created on 2RP about authoritative roleplay, is that White Aegis is doing it, is probably one of the best examples of a semi-police guild or a paramilitary out there. And if any other guild wants to do this kind of thing, I would really look at what Terradrim's doing, because this is exactly the best way to do it, because it means that any participants have the ability to walk out, or they don't get stuck and they don't have to be dictated to. So that's one reason why I really do respect the way how they're doing this.
Oh, I can completely sympathise with that. It makes a lot more sense than the sort of stuff I've encountered in the past.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So other than, that, what do you think, as far as, the guild as a whole, what sets it apart? What is going to make, someone that is looking on the 2RP site or any other RP site where, guilds might be listed, what sets yours apart that really is going to make someone say, I want to join that guild above all others?
It really has to fit what their character is. And of course, if they're looking for something that will be active, we will plan on having some projects. There will be small plots. There will be bigger, more intricate plots, as the one like we've been talking with the Ashenfold Cartel, where we involve other guilds, and I'm hoping to have more guilds be brought up into our PR circle, I may call it. So they won't be bored, and it's not something where we're imposing people to be very active. There's a certain amount of activities that I'm expecting to. I'm more hoping for honest members. So if they're occasionally going to RP, let me know ahead. That's really not a problem. So we don't want to force anybody's hand. And at the same time, it's a guild meant for those who are looking for more serious militaristic experience.
And just to add to that, another really interesting thing about the way that we're going to work some plots here is that people can actually try and requisition funds or materials or troops for projects of their own, so they can have their own little side plots, should they be interested in that.
Everybody, especially White Aegis and Ashenfold, sorry for cutting you off, is also a member of the Tyrian Accord, and we actually had a officer meeting a while back, and there's actually already plans to create roleplay hubs between up to 12 other guilds.
Yeah, I'm sure we were going to get into that actually with our next section, but before we going to get into the meat of the RP side of it, with the interaction between the cartel, and White Aegis, I wanted to get kind of just a little bit of background from you guys, because, and I'll be honest, me as an in-game RPer, one thing that I try to do when I'm scouting out guilds, and I'm pretty sure Sin, can attest to this, I'll go to the leader or some sort of official with the guild, and I'll say, what experience do you have as far as RP? And honestly, and I'll just ask you guys the same kind of question. So, I mean, Terradrim, starting with you, I guess, what sort of background do you have as far as RPing and things like that?
I'm not good with remembering how many years. I know I started RPing in EverQuest 2, and I will admit I wasn't that great back then. I was just starting. Because the first time I played that game, EverQuest 2, I was just doing some PvE, and I joined an RP server going, what the hell is roleplay? Just being curious about it. I was seeing these people talking in character, and I just found it really interesting that they were playing the game story. So I started with this, very clumsily writing, and it sort of evolved. It killed my first characters because they were that awful. And then it moved up to World of Warcraft. And I started to do a bit more RP there, but it was more casual. And I had my really big launch in game roleplay in Aeon, so it's not that long ago, even though as a teenager I did Dungeon and Dragon, but where I'm from, roleplay isn't a very common term, especially since I'm in a francophone environment. But I did some tabletop as a teenager, but it really launched in Aeon. Raildolfer was actually my first guild leader in Aeon, and we had a very intense military guild there, and I really enjoyed what we were doing here. I started off as a simple member, and within months I made it to first officer of the guild. So I was doing a lot of PR. I was actually doing what Kaelis is doing right now. I was the ambassador of that guild, and kind of went from there. Eventually quit because of the grinding of the game. Went back a couple of years after, did some RP back again in WoW. Went back to Aeon, this time on Dark Side, and met quite a few friends there. Tried some more non-traditional character from there, and when I heard that Guild Wars 2 was starting and it was very different, I was already very excited and decided I was going to start my own guild and do something different, because in Aeon, as much as I did enjoy myself, I found that the RP community there was starting to stagnate, and I was looking for something more, because the grinding, and it was that the game, the MMOs were too focused on grindings, everything was too static, so to have RP you kind of had to do it in cities for it to make sense. If you did it out there, you can't really have your character brag about having achieved something, because everybody else has achieved it already. And I was looking for something. I was almost ready to quit roleplay because of these types of things. I thought that the environment wasn't catering to it enough, and then I learned about this game and I was like, oh, this is our chance to relaunch RP and have it fun again.
So initially, when you were talking about Aeon and the grind, was it really, because Guild Wars 2, with their system, from what I've seen from the BWE, there's a lot of small quests, there's the, various events that you can just happen upon in the game if you're just out exploring. Now, because in Guild Wars 1, as everyone knows, there weren't a lot of levels. There's only the 20, I believe. But Guild Wars 2, you're jumping up to 80. Is that daunting to you at all? Because I am probably just like you. I absolutely hate grinding.
No, it's not, because during the beta weekend, I already managed to get my character to level 25, and it's not that difficult, and it's not always killing the same monsters over and over again. And if some parts are slower to RP, we've actually had some of these bigger, not world event, I forgot how they're called, but they're events that are a little bit repeating. So you have, for example, if you take Queensdale, you have an area around Beetle Run where centaurs kind of take over certain encampments. And you have to repeatedly defend a certain area, and once you've done it for a certain amount of time, the seraphs come and they kind of start to rebuild there. And then we pop onto the offensive and go to other places, and it builds great experience level. And I find that these types of events will be great for our PvE, as I mentioned earlier. So we can, and I've actually done some RPVE in those. So in between waves, you have characters talking a bit and giving themselves encouragement, just resting, helping if there's anyone whose health is a little bit lower, helping each other out. So it's a good opportunity to keep on leveling, and it's not grinding, and you can do it, like I've said, in character. And later on, when you talk about it, even if other people have done it, well, the centaur problem is there. It's not the story of, I've killed this big named monster here and everybody else has done it. So it's more dynamic problems that are there and that can be included in stories.
A lot more flavour if that makes sense. Rather than the usual grind, it's a case of everything seems to develop and keep going. So I totally agree with what you're saying there. And the idea of RPV sounds wonderful, because I was hoping for something along those lines to experience at some point, because I've not had a chance to yet.
We actually do that in the cartel. We don't have a specific term for it, but we do that by stating, roleplay in all spatial chats. We expect everybody within reason to be in character as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I think as far as the the sect, different sects in the cartel are concerned, we would be able to do that, because especially if it's like a training thing, like my character is a member of the Blade. For anyone that's listening, you're not really aware of the different sects. Each sect in the cartel kind of has a different role, and mostly your Blade, that's your muscle. So if you can get a bunch of Blade people together, that could be like your newer person, and hey, we're gonna see just what you're made of, and there's some centaurs, or there's some Flame Legion Char over there, and hey, they've kind of they're attacking that camp, so we're gonna see what you can do. Go with us as we try to help them out. So definitely, I agree with you. There's definitely some RPVE possibility. So I definitely agree with that. Kaelis, what kind of background do you have? Because you've been kind of quiet so far.
Oh, I'm just letting people do their talking and then replying to that.
Secrets.
Well, just quickly on the topic of grinding, one of the games that I used to actually RP in was Jade Dynasty. And they had a wonderful system in there for grinding. Like, grinding was a pretty big part of the game still, but a lot of those WoW clones are. But they had actually implemented an auto grind feature, so you can literally go and play the game the way you want to normally, and then leave it on at night and have it automatically grind for you while you're sleeping or away at work. So that's it's a pretty cool thing. But in terms of my RP history, I started off forum RPing on this one forum, battleworld.net. But it's long since closed down now, which was kind of sad because I met my first real RP buddy on that site in those forums. It was pretty dead, so they were the only person to talk to.
Nice.
After that, just sort of really got into Dungeons and Dragons and Guild Wars, RPing during some of the Prophecies games and the later ones there. In terms of guilds, I think I joined one guild, and other than that, I was just sort of spamming in the alt chat in any big city I was in. Hey, anyone want RP? But
oh, that's bad.
I know. I couldn't find anybody, and apparently I was useless with Google at the time or something. I don't know. I continued on from there, waiting for Guild Wars 2 to come out, thinking, I'll just start my own role-playing guild, and then I ended up stumbling across White Aegis, and I was like, oh man, this is incredible. And they're so clean cut, they're really moral and all that, so ethical even. So I figured that somebody, to sort of mix it up a little bit would be a pretty good thing for them, and that's sort of where I went with my character there in terms of KaelisRa and the position he's in now, where he's still gonna follow a lot of their rules and all that, but he's the guy that's going to do what most of them won't, because politics is one hand washing the other and all that dirty stuff, right?
Ooh, the bad boy.
Exactly, a little more bad, but not horrible.
Every guild needs one, just a little bit to try the edges. It's flavoursome, makes everything a bit more spicy.
It's true. He might get into a little bit of trouble. He'll be like the person to go and do this, but I'll get in trouble. Don't worry, just blame it on me, and he takes the rap for it, kind of thing. But that's just his personal principle. If you're into D&D at all, more the chaotic good, I suppose. Just he's gonna do whatever he feels is right for himself, just so long as it stays within the good alignment.
Yeah, I like that principle. I was wondering about that, because what comes to mind as well was the fact that, is the laws you're enforce based on what your whole group deals as good, or are they based on actual laws in game? Because I can't find any sort of written laws of what is forbidden, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's difficult to limit people, because remember, you're playing, I suppose, autonomous characters. They're supposed to be able to choose to do whatever they want, so the choice for being punished and doing something they're not supposed to should be available to them, right? Even if it is forbidden, it's just they can do it, you're just going to get punished.
Yeah, we're gonna... Oh, sorry. Basically was just adding to what Kaelis was saying. We're going to be more centric around game lore, and the lore of the guild is centered around this more. But as Kaelis said, they can break the rules if they want to, as long as they're breakable rules, unlike physical, laws of physics. But they have to be ready to face the consequences or be really good at not getting caught.
So here's the question, though, because this is something that we as the cartel, we've tried to do it a little bit in the first couple of BWEs. Has your guild searched out like RP locations? Like, we've searched out taverns, we've searched out different bases for the different sects and things like that. Have you guys done something similar?
We haven't done like official search parties in the beta weekends. First of all, a lot of our members hadn't been able to be there in the first beta weekends. Some of them were pretty limited in how much they could play during the last beta weekends. So, but I am a complete and utterly exploring junkie, and I have a bunch of maps already posted on our forums in our cartography department. And I've found a lot of places, and we even have our place set up for a launch event.
Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty cool. But are you guys are you going to try to base yourselves out of one specific city?
Our home base is in Divinity's Reach. However, we're going to travel all around. So we already had a forum little RP that we were heading from Divinity's Reach to Lion's Arch, and our launch event is actually going to happen in Lion's Arch. But we're going to be in all the main cities, and if there are other cities around that we're going to have, and we're hoping to see most of our RP happen on the field and not in the cities.
Something as well to add to that would be the fact that, because White Aegis is, Terradrim said, based out of Divinity's Reach, it's sort of like territory of influence kind of thing. So eventually, though it might be a kind of narrow start, hopefully we're going to be able to widen it, make it a little larger, so have some of our guild members go out and actually create, quote unquote, create different safe houses, I suppose, in other major cities. That's something that would go with the in-character sort of plot.
We're doing the same thing. We're beginning with two home territories, and then we're going to expand as necessary.
Now, here's a question for you guys, because you were talking about different races in your guild. Do you have a lot of Asura in your guild?
We started to have a few. I think we only have 2 or 3 as it is. Only one's a main. But it's starting, because at first, when I first opened it, we were only going to have 3 major races, which were humans, Norn, and Sylvari. But then we opened up to Char and Azura, so they've just started to join in recently. I was hoping to have them more argue their way into the guild, but that was maybe a little bit too demanding. But yeah, we have Teldagoth, which is, I believe, a main, and only 2 others.
Well, here's the reason I was asking, because you said you wanted to do the RP in the field. If you're going to travel from one city to another, are your characters, do they trust in the the technology of the Azura gates?
My captain actually has a bit of a phobia of them. It's not really a phobia, he's just really uncomfortable traveling by Azura gates. But yes, they do use the technology. They will use it if needed, all depending on what they're doing, because if they're doing an escort for, let's say, a caravan, usually caravans don't use the Azura gate for that amount of traveling, especially if they have stops to do on the way. And given they do a lot of protection on outskirts villages, those don't tend to have an Azura gate. But if it's faster, say they're going for a mission on a village outside Shiver Peak from Divinity's Reach, they'll definitely take the gate to Shiver Peak, to Holbrack, and go from there.
Okay, yeah, because as I've read, and I know I've been talking to a couple people in the guild about this, but I've just gotten into actually reading like the Ghost of Ascalon and things like that. So it's really taught me a lot of the different races, how they interact, and I didn't realize that they had this phobia of that, and you kind of used that word correctly. It was like definitely phobia of that technology. So I'm always curious to see how other races feel about it, because I might incorporate a part of that into my main character, who is a Char warrior. But moving on as to really the big interaction in between both of our guilds, White Aegis and the Cartel. Who approached who really was the brains behind the operation for it?
I guess I'll cut in with the sword there. A few of the PMs sent back and forth on Engine were between Uro and I can't exactly pronounce his whole name because I can't see it right now and he's not online. But yeah, Uro and I were talking specifically to try and start up a little bit of a bandit plot, because White Aegis is supposed to be having a little bit of a rise in bandits around the area. So Ashenfold Cartel said that they might be interested in supplying one of their sects available for that sort of bandit kind of raid. And it just went from there in terms of where we could possibly go.
That's right there is wonderful. The fact that something can flow together so easily.
Well, it's not too difficult to have something fall together when you have two people actually able to communicate and don't seem to have too much of a snuff wanting to hold one guild higher than the other or anything like that. As far as either of us were concerned, we're two people pretty much equal standing trying to figure out what's going to happen between two guilds and making it entertaining for everybody else.
Yeah, and given White Aegis had prior connection with the cartel, when we started to speak about that rise in bandits in the area, the idea of having the cartel join in sort of appeared, and just at the same time, Uros contacted me, and it only made sense that the two PR agents be in connection, and it all went from there, just the way Kaelis just explained.
So here's a question though, like has any other guild, because I know, both being in the Tyranid Accord, there's a group of them here now, has anyone else approached you as far as, wanting to interact, or has the cartel, were they really the ones, I say they, but were we really the ones to kind of put our foot in the door as far as guild to guild interaction on that level?
I'm not sure if Terradrim has any contact with other people, but I know that I'm currently talking with one of the other guilds from the Tyrian Accord, Iridescence, and I guess I should fill Terradrim in as to the latest PM later on, but I'm trying to organize, along with them and Terradrim, some form of in-character meeting to try and form an alliance of sorts, and potentially like trade routes between the two guilds and try and get something going on there.
All I have to do is pop into the Tyrian Accord guild leader chat. Yes, we have a leader chat. Leaders only. Just kidding. And we already have, I pretty much can bug Dastardly and Gesk from sigils, and I'm already in discussion with my friend Dex over KOTP, so it's probably going to build organically over time.
Yeah, I haven't been good on the Tyrian Accord. I will give that confession openly. I have to be more out there, and with the launch coming up, that will definitely happen, so you'll see a lot more of me once that happens.
And not really to question so much, because I don't know anything really about Iridescence. What kind of, are they along the similar lines of you? Like, could the cartel eventually be facing two, kind of protectorate type guilds, or how is that working?
Well, from what I could tell from reading a lot of their lore, Iridescence is sort of based, like, they dabble in a little bit of everything, from mercenary business to legitimate operations, but I think that they actually posted some where they'd be willing to do something a little less legitimate, should the price be right. That being said, they sort of function out of they call it the Trinity, 3 leaders for their guild, and it seems as if they're actually doing everything together, which is really good because it shows a guild that can be reliable at the very least.
No, definitely. I've never talked to any of them, I'm hoping, eventually I would love to get, more guilds like that on here, especially within that Tyrian Accord, try to get a sort of a dialogue going. within all the guilds within the Accord itself, because it doesn't have to be just the leaders, so that you guys can plan from high on top looking down on the rest of the peons here, just to definitely get sort of a collaboration within all of the guilds. So as far as turning the scope down just a hair back to just our two guilds, and from what you guys have been able to talk about it, how really is the conflict, or the rivalry, however you want to say it, between our two guilds? How is it supposed to, or how do you think it's going to end up playing out? As far as if my character is walking through Divinity's Reach and I see maybe a character within your guild, like, am I going to openly try to avoid him, or how is that going to work out?
Okay. Here's a little bit how I personally see it, and this is opinion, and it's not set in stone. Given we've had some light planning done so far, as I've said, we've spotted a raise in bandits in the area of Divinity's Reach and Queensdale, and Uros had mentioned about the Den, which is more your grunt bandits. And so we're going to increase our patrols. So we'll be in your way if you want. We're definitely going to be more present on the road, and whenever we see bandit activities or activities that look illegal, we'd butt in. And being our patrol unlike the cartel, our patrols are not hard to identify. It's not any harder to identify a White Aegis member that is part of the militia as it is to identify a seraph. We have big white tabards, which is part of the uniform for our militia to wear, so with a big White Aegis symbol. And I've made it so that in our lore we're somewhat known. So it's not like mandatory for everybody to have heard of us, but as you see us going around, if you've met us once, you won't have trouble recognizing us again. Knowing that we're vigilantes, if some of your members might learn it the hard way, some of them might have heard of us. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm not against a certain level of metagaming. The reason I say we're somewhat known is if you want your character to know about us, they can. It's something that's publicly known that we serve protection and we help law enforcement. So it would make sense for some of your characters doing more illegal business, or if carrying something they really shouldn't be, to hide at the sight of us, or be a little bit more shady or something like that. Or if they're curious, maybe tempt fate. As for if we see one of your members doing something illegal, like I've said, we're definitely going to butt in, and we will try to apprehend anyone we see stealing or doing something that's not legit, even if it's peeping through a window. We're some of the plans aren't really fully made yet for starters, and I would like to see, whenever you have some job going on, this would be somewhat metagaming, but we do have to put a certain level of context where our characters will cross path with yours when something's happening, and we're going to intervene and see this, and we're going to want to investigate who are these people that are doing these bad acts that are increasing the rates of complaints that we have for thieveries, for vandalism, and the likes. So we're going to want to investigate into the cartel as soon as we can identify a member. And there had been talk about once the conflict starts to have spy infiltrate each guild. So that hasn't yet been fully agreed on, but it's definitely a possibility of how it can move forward and try to learn more about the other guilds. White Aegis, being very pure on protection, would definitely, from the lead, want to have activities into trying to dismantle, ideally, the cartel, or on best case scenario, want to have them turn a new leaf if you want.
I can see our characters meeting a lot, unfortunately. Oh god.
It's a good thing that we introduced the legality concept, which makes it so much more difficult to figure shit out.
Well, and actually, when he touched on the legality part of it, the cartel as a whole isn't just we do evil deeds and we lurk in the night and things like that, which I think
Twiddles mustache.
Yes, exactly. The cartel itself, it has, by and large, and really what I'm going to try to get my character to do, if I can, because it's just in his nature, is to do, operate within the lawful side of, of the of the law itself, doing legal acts, working with legitimate businesses that are within the cartel. But yeah, Sin, if you can, briefly touch upon the legality concept and how it plays out with the cartel.
Legality was a concept based upon a suggestion that Alexandus made about a month ago. It's the idea that the cartel is separated generally. If you actually sit down and read all of our lore, a lot of people seem to think that we have slaves. Oh no, we're evil. Actually, if you read a bunch of our lore, there's quite a few sections of the cartel that are purely legitimate. The Oxford Lodge is completely legitimate, so is Svartholm, which is a allegiance or a sub-faction within the Hunt. Legality basically splits all of the guild into two sides. You have the legal, which is the Akar Trade Union, which is basically this union of five company guilds ran by these noble families that want to invest and help Kryta. They want to help the people survive and live in the dragon-haunted times. On the other side of the coin, you have the Akar Cartel, which is what everybody in the criminal underworld is going to know us by. It's a syndicate that only cares about itself and is trying to undo everybody. We decided that instead of going with the Illuminati-like aspect of being the secret society, we want to be like the Freemasons, Not saying the Freemasons are secret society, well, they are. We wanted to be like a name that's known. The name Ashenfold is known, but it's kind of a take or go. A lot of people think we're just this, and a lot of people think we're just that. So you're going to have conspiracy theorists who make things up. And by doing this, it provides a double blind, and it basically means that people can interact with members of the cartel and not even know they're Ashenfold. They could just think they're just some mercenary or just a medic working in the middle of Kryta helping people, and that person themselves won't even know that their actions could be helping someone getting drugged in Lion's Arch. It gives us a greater sense of this dynamic, ever-folding concept. Yes, because you love your snuff box so much, Gabriel, you scale-killing bastard.
Hey, it was a legitimate shot, okay?
I approved it, I know. Anyway, that's what legality is. And each side also has lies that it's told to each other, and the idea is that people can go and discover things. So we really play upon the concept of the cartel being this secret society. It's the idea that there's all this stuff out there, and you really have to go and roleplay and find it out. So yeah, most likely White Aegis will find stuff, and it'll be really cool to see the roleplay of someone in the Aegis trying to find stuff, and then maybe someone in the cartel starts, sending messages of, don't go any farther, or we'll kill your family. I don't know if it'll go that far, but it's going to get pretty interesting. A lot of good cloak and dagger.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Not to mention that given the complexity of your guild and all the branches and the leveling, and like you said, the double-sided, and there's a part of the guild that's fully legal, there's a lot of it which will be left to interpretation. So if, for example, White Aegis discovers mainly the legal branch of the cartel and they start to associate all two sides of it, they're going to want to attack the guild as its own and probably have some nasty publicity made for a group that's actually fully legal. As for, on the other hand, if they discover more of the legal side, where there's going to be maybe an attempt to inform the guild that they have some traitors within their ranks, it can play in 100 different ways. So it's really going to depend on what's being discovered, what's going to happen. So it's very hard to plan and foresee how it's going to end, if it ends, because this conflict could last forever.
I would personally love a story if someone in the cartel tried to frame Terradrim's character and get her nearly executing Kryta or something. That would be a pretty interesting race against the clock storyline.
Sure, that could be really interesting, yeah.
That's something we should do months down the line, though. Months down the line. You don't want to do that at launch, because then that's not fun, because then all the dramatic stuff is done with.
No, that's definitely not something that you want to do at launch, but there are definitely stories, and there are plenty of them, that you can do to throw off a definitely legitimate group, such as the White Aegis. An example of what I just thought of off the top of my head when you guys were talking about it was we could definitely, like, frame an attack on our own location if we could definitely organize, like, let's say one of our shops, and we would be talking to one of the White Aegis members right outside it, and then all of a sudden we'll hire, or we'll get some of our own members from another sect to do like a mock attack on it to make it look very legitimate, to make it look like, hey, we definitely are the victims here and we are legitimate business. That could be just another act to, throw off the White Aegis to maybe something more shady that we're doing. So definitely a lot of opportunity. So that's why I kind of wanted to get the idea from you guys of what is the scope for the future of our guild interaction? Is this something that you want to be an ongoing issue? Do you eventually want to have a close to it and interact with other guilds? How do you want it to work out?
To quote somebody that is quite incredible in the art of PR, we want perpetual conflict because that will mean something to perpetually do.
That's my personal motto. That's why the guild's against itself. Conflict equates plot equates story.
Input's fun.
And everyone wants fun, because fun is fun when you're trying to have fun.
Damn straight.
Plus, if all you do is social roleplay, then everybody gets pregnant and it becomes as Terria turns, and it gets really boring.
Certainly Jerry Springer.
Well, if my character gets pregnant, then that will actually be interesting RP.
It is not a tumor!
Suddenly Gabriel faints for the first time in his life.
When is Gabriel coming out of his home?
Oh, dick. Slash fiction's all over again. Stop this.
So really, is that really what you guys want to do? Do you have, is that the idea? Is that from Guild Wars 2, start to finish, then, these two guilds are going to be going at it, and would you love to see other guilds kind of throw their hand in the mix and just try to get it, almost as complicated as you want it to be?
Oh, it's going to probably happen. I mean, with so many guilds in the Alliance, I'm pretty sure it's easy to get plots going with even a lot of your other members in your guild or our guild to go and do stuff with them. We might even get some of their guilds to help us out in investigations of specific branches of your guild. There's lots of stuff that can be done in terms of plot, and just because we're going to be from Guild Wars start to Guild Wars end potentially with you doesn't mean that we can't be with anybody else, right?
No, definitely. I was just talking about as the storylines, because I'm almost sure that with as, straightforward as your guild is trying to be, and as complex and, as our guild is, that so many storylines can branch off and really start to include others. Someone was talking about, I think it was Sin, framing characters for other things. We could easily toss another guild into the mix and try to frame them for, a crime that maybe we committed. Maybe we were hired to assassinate somebody while they were moving from one city to the next, and try to put the fall on someone else.
When all those mercenary guilds kept popping up last summer, I made the joke that we should totally just play them against each other and cause complete anarchy. Then I realized if I did that, everybody would be QQing about it. But come on, it'd be awesome. Every mercenary guild at its, and I'm just sitting there with one of the characters going, "Mwah!"
There are just so many mercenary guilds.
Oh yeah. And you also have the fact that at any time, Ashenfold can completely change. I mean, we have a dragon cult. The dragon cult might go White Aegis, another threat, and start infiltrating you, and then maybe they'll send some mass terrorist attack. I mean, you could see, all the monsters get killed off, and then the 5 families are at the rule, or what, maybe maybe the cartel becomes a complete syndicate, maybe it becomes its own independent nation, who knows? The cartel itself is going to constantly evolve, so fantastic thing about this roleplay. You have to factor in the cartel always evolving, other guilds always evolving, and then the plot lines of the guilds always evolving. I mean, for the love of the six, there's more than enough storyline here, because we basically have created a living, breathing world of roleplay, which is fantastic.
How far is White Aegis? Yeah, how far is White Aegis willing to go to see something through, for instance, right? That's an idea. Yeah. Oh God. Think about it.
Can you imagine someone coming to power and doing a Revan going too far?
Well, actually, here's a question for Terradrim, is if you had a character like Kaelis, and let's say they do go too far, they decide to interrogate that person, they decide to torture them, that person ends up dying, or what is the punishment system for someone that does something like that in your guild?
It's really going to depend on a lot of outcome, and on the person themselves. Kaelis being a politician and an ambassador, an important ambassador, if it's killing a person, especially if the person is found innocent in the end, there's a good chance that Kaelis would be handed to the authority. He wouldn't be kicked out of the guild, but he'd have to learn his lesson first. We have some disciplinary measures that are placed there for insubordination and people going too far where they get some suspension, and we have holding cells next to our training hall at the base of our manor, and people who do disobey or go too far or don't go on to their own definition of what's right can be held prisoner for a certain amount of time within the guild so that they get their lesson learned. But it's really going to be depending on each case, and it's going to be decided within all of the officers of that department and the captains. So it's really going to depend, and it depends on the outcome, on what happened. Was that person guilty or not? Was there any elements of self-defense in there or not? So it's going to vary a lot.
And as far as, because you guys have no char yet, the Black Citadel, is that off limits to you guys as far as helping people?
There's going to be some reluctance. Most likely Norn will be sent there first. We do have a bunch of them in the guild. I know Terradrim probably wouldn't go there himself. As I said, his father used to be a soldier in the Ebenhawk, so that's kind of left a scar on the family. But once chars start to join the guild, they'll probably be more actively there. I don't really see the char coming to hire us, but if they do, it's not something that we'd turn a blind eye to, but we'd go there with apprehension and probably an idea of this might be an ambush. So we'd be where we'd normally send 1 or 2 men to do the job, we might send a small group just so they can watch each other's back type of thing.
That sounds awesome, and with that, we're hitting at just about an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Guys, with the White Aegis, I want to thank you guys so much for coming out. We had some great discussion. And if you any other comments and closing or anything?
I'd just like to keep it there that our website's open for anyone who wants to come and RP. Our base is open with the front door always unlocked for people who want to come and talk to those at the reception. Other than that, just really thankful that you guys had us for this podcast. So it was great Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thanks a lot for everything, guys.
I hope to slither around your guild sometime, actually. It sounds fantastic. And
if there's anyone that doesn't know yet, and what is your guys' what's your website? What's the address for it?
It's www.whiteaegis.engine.com. It's actually into the chat part of the Mumble conversation.
Okay, and I'll definitely I'll try to put a link up, or I'll try to remember to do that when I put this on YouTube. So on closing, Leisure, anything else?
Fantastic cast. It's great to have the second one going, and we've got all this going. And I hope to pop on, like I said, hope to pop on the site actually, because it seems the way my character's developing, it seems I might be around you guys a lot in game. So I'm looking forward to that. Should be great RP.
We shall find stories in these dragon-haunted times.
And on that note, we are going to be out. And again, I'm Alexandus with the Ashenfold Cartel. Thank you guys for being on the podcast, and hopefully we'll be talking to you next time.